occupational health psychology. She has professional credentials from Harvard Medical School, Boston, the Psychometric Center at the University of Cambridge, UK, and Beck Institute, Philadelphia. Her guiding philosophy is the emotional well-being is possible for everyone. She has regularly been conducting workshops on mental health and emotional well-being. She's currently pursuing her PhD and is also a faculty member at Cornash, the Lifestyle Management School, Kolkata, which is a mental health vocational training facility. She has written 2 books, and the first one is Musings, an Insight into Me. The second one is Hope, Stories for a Healthy Mind, in her second book. Is her second book. Now, I hope you will be, all of you would be enjoying the insights and the various other things which she'll be sharing with all of you. So I invite Pragati Jalan Sureka to take over. Thank you, ma'am. Please take over, please.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Sengupta, for the nice introduction, and welcome everyone who is here. And thank you, Techno India, for giving me this opportunity to address the youth. As we were discussing, the pandemic has brought home one simple fact to all of us, that we can't neglect our emotional well-being and the way we look after our mental health, right? So if one thing that all of us have learned is, like we brush our teeth daily in the morning, we also need to take care of our mental health with simple things. So how can we take care of our mental health on a day-to-day basis? That is something that I will talk to you today. My PhD topic is essentially on emotional well-being, how to see that in day-to-day living, those simple things that we take for granted, will they help us grow as individuals or will they pull us down? So without much ado, let's go ahead and discuss this concept. What is emotional well-being? In simple terms, emotional well-being is emotional wellness. It's that ability in us where we can learn and grow from experiences. Now, let's just take the current pandemic. Most of us realized that everything that was happening was beyond our control. Some of us had family members who became sick. All of us here, especially all the youth and the students, you realized that studying was something which had become absolutely difficult by yourself. You had to manage, you had to move to an online mode of studying, and things that you took for granted, like laughing with friends, maybe chit-chatting, shared camaraderie, it was not possible in the online space. Yet, the fact that all of us here today, we are more than 70 in this room right now, the virtual room that we have, all of us have survived a very difficult year. Yes or no? Yes. And in spite of challenges, we have emerged much stronger and much more resilient. So what we can do is actually learn about emotional well-being in such a way that our decision-making skills go up, and that innate emotional intelligence that we have, we are able to utilize it. So how are we going to do it? In simple words, by actually collecting a wealth of emotional ability resources. Anything internally or externally that helps us grow, that helps us take stock of the situation, is an emotional ability resource. Let me give you an example. Do you like to do some form of exercise on a regular basis? If you don't, just see half an hour in nature, or maybe just doing spot jogging, is going to release endorphins in your body. Those pain receptors that make it worthwhile for you to go on when life gets tough. So one very important emotional ability resource is daily exercise, some form of physical activity that makes you feel calmer. That mind-body integration that we talk about, where you feel both these things are in tandem. So develop these simple resources. The next emotional ability resource that you can develop inside yourself is daily journaling. Now, journaling is something which means writing in a notebook every day. How did my day go? What felt good? What did not feel good? What could I have done better? And what is it that I needed to let go of? So when I actually start looking at things with a very analytical mindset, I'm able to see that there are certain things that I can control. What can I control? The amount of food I eat, the amount of time I sleep, the amount of hours I put into study. Those are things I can control, right? Now, when will the pandemic end? Can you control? I can't. I don't know if you can. It's obviously something that we need to let go of. But at the same time, we need to take certain precautions to build up our immunity and to safeguard our health. So whether it's wearing masks, whether it's sanitizing yourself well, whether it's maintaining social distancing, these are things we do it as a way of life. So when we do journaling about our thoughts, what felt good today? What did not feel good today? What is it that I can regulate? What is it that I cannot regulate? My emotions stop being a huge ball of mess, which absolutely disempower me. I'll give another example here. Like when you get angry, do you get angry? I know I do. And as far as my knowledge of psychology goes, all of us get angry. So most of us are very scared of anger. You know, when I see people in therapy, they tell me I don't like one thing about myself, that I get angry very fast. So I prefer to avoid being angry. So either I'm lashing out, or I become aggressive, I talk aggressively, I bang things, or I'm not able to focus on my work. So, you know, I feel anger is a useless emotion. Perhaps I'm not going to get into the moralistic viewpoint of it. But today, if I looked at all emotions help us to know what's going on inside our body. What is anger? Something which did not go the way I wanted, and that does not make me feel in control. So next time, if I feel angry, I have choices. My emotional intelligence will make me realize that I can feel anger, but just being angry does not mean that I'm absolutely reactive or all over the place. I do have a choice to calm down, use my decision making, and decide how I choose to react to my anger. Now, instead of reacting, I need to start responding. What would a response be when I'm angry? The way you and I are talking right now, learning how to tell our point without being all over the place. Usually, when we are reactive, when we are angry, our nostrils flare up, our tone of voice becomes high-pitched. We probably frown like this. We start yelling. Sometimes we bang our fist, and our heartbeat goes very, very fast. We may feel dry mouth. We may stumble over words. We may feel as though we have hot air coming out of our ears. So the list goes on and on. That is when I'm in a reactive mode. Now, to respond when I'm angry, let's say someone has done something that I do not like. What will I do? First, I will understand that I'm angry. Next, I tell myself, I have a choice here. Either I can do all these things that I mentioned, or what is my purpose of anger? To get my point across, to show my displeasure, right? And if possible, we can save the situation somehow. So what I need to do when I'm responding from a space of anger, I speak about my point in an assertive manner. I do not yell, scream, shout. My breathing remains normal. My tone and my diction are in my control. And I feel that my point can be spoken about in such a way that I get work done. So I'm able to make choices which actually help me get what I want instead of going to pieces. So what each one of us needs to do is first be aware that we have something going on inside us. Next, how do we choose to regulate it? by responding instead of reacting. And when we are in this mode of action, we realize that we have choices. So over time, we have better interpersonal communication with others, and we are more effective in the work that we set out for ourselves. So these were two concrete emotional ability resources that I told you about: exercising and journaling. The list is absolutely open. Keep adding on to things that help you understand your emotions, regulate them, and then kind of help your decision-making skills. So, are you aware of what are the simple emotional ability resources that facilitate good communication? Some of the things that facilitate effective communications is concepts like coping, resilience, and adjustment. Now, I will come back to the pandemic with everyone. How is it that some of us have managed to grow in spite of the challenges ahead? That is because we have coped up with the situation. We have seen our strengths and weaknesses, and in our own way, we have nurtured ourselves so that instead of emptying out every day, we manage to absolutely remain at a level where life can be managed, if not completely have it in a way that goes in what I want to do. Now, what is resilience? If I talk about resilience, resilience is, in spite of challenges, when I can grow, when I can hold on to what is really going on at that time. Think of a time in the last 10 years when you felt that you will completely go to pieces. Maybe an exam that you were really fearing, maybe something that you aspired for that you did not get. Thought of it. Now think of how did you overcome that day? How did you overcome that specific challenge when you did not get what you wanted and when the going was very tough? So what really helped you cope up, if you actually sit and analyze it in such a way, is your resilience. So when we talk about this concept of emotional wellness that we bring about by using emotional ability resources, we need to understand that there are certain things which help us nurture our own emotional strength. So what I want to talk to you about today is emotional intelligence. What I want you to take away when we talk about emotional well-being is to use your emotional intelligence. We all are born with emotional intelligence. And the best part about emotional intelligence is that it's something that one can build on. Today, all of you listening to me here today are the citizens of tomorrow who will run our country as engineers, as managers, and as successful professionals in your chosen field. So while your IQ is going to help you out, what is really going to make a difference is your emotional intelligence. Any business magazine that you turn today will elucidate that emotional intelligence is the buzzword that you need to focus on. So what is emotional intelligence? There are 5 components to it. The first one is self-awareness. Ask yourself, are you aware of what triggers you? I was discussing anger early on with you. So do you know what makes you angry? Is it a person's expression? Is it a person's tone of voice? Is it someone not doing what they promised to do? So firstly, if you want to develop your emotional intelligence for emotional well-being, absolutely become aware of your triggers. I had mentioned journaling earlier on. In the same way, make a list of your triggers. What is it that makes me get charged up? Next, the next component of emotional intelligence is self-management. Ask yourself, I can modulate my tone, pitch, and words, even in the throes of emotions. If the answer is yes, great. Then you know that self-management is the key of all forms of growth and productivity. And if you realize that no, when you are in the throes of a particular emotion, it could be anger, it could be hurt, it could be disgust, it could be shame, it could be many, many emotions that you are uncomfortable with. The first clue you get that you are not feeling able to cope up is that your tone of voice changes, your pitch changes, and the words that you use come across very fast. So sit with yourself and absolutely try and count 1 to 10. Don't say anything, just stare in the space and just calm down. When you do that, you will get to practice a pause, and before you know it, you are able to modulate your tone, your pitch, and words. The third component of emotional intelligence is self-motivation. That zone of motivation where you can create meaning in your life. Now, all of us here have studied for exams. And don't you think that the only time things really go in your mind is when you are in that flow state, when you decide that, yes, I need to study in spite of the distractions. That's when you drown out all the voices and you get motivated to put in your best. So your emotional intelligence is reflected in your level of self-motivation. Can you motivate yourself to do things that are good for yourself? If you can, then that is your emotional intelligence that you are building up bit by bit. The next component I want to talk about is empathy. Empathy is the ability to walk in another's shoes. Going back to an argument that you have had with someone and you are angry with the person. At that point, if you could actually pause for a minute and think, how is it that I would have felt in this person's shoes if somebody was yelling at me? How is it, what makes this person yell at me? So if I can get into another person's shoes, then I am getting more and more emotionally intelligent. And the last component of emotional intelligence is handling relationships, where we is more important than anything else when you are communicating, where mutual benefits is what one looks at. So when you look at growing your emotional intelligence with these 5 facets of emotional intelligence, what's going to happen is over time, you will experience emotional well-being. You will feel emotionally stable. And when things don't go your way, you have that ke sera sera attitude. It's okay. I understand it didn't go my way, but that does not mean that I have gone completely to pieces. It didn't feel good. So in my own way, I will nurture. You also develop emotional strength. And there is growth and development. You become flexible. You do effective communication. And over time, what happens is you thrive. One of the most important practices for growing emotional intelligence is mindfulness. That ability to focus and be in the here and now. In fact, there was a research conducted by Martin Seligman and Dalai Lama. And what they found is Buddhist Zen monks actually practice mindfulness as a way of life. And that is why they are emotionally stable. There is happiness and emotional strength inside them. So I want you all to take a minute and think about how is it that you cater to your emotional well-being on a regular basis. If there is anything particular that you want me to talk about, let me know in the chat box and I would be happy to take up these questions. And further than this, there are some of other facets that we never think about. Okay, I have a question here. When we love someone, how to not get affected with one's behavior, especially when you are in the workplace? Now, that is a very good question because, as we are talking about emotional well-being today, the best way not to get affected with another's behavior is nurture our emotional well-being. With emotional intelligence, what you can do if you do not want to get affected is keep the remote control of your emotions in your own hands. Now, you will ask me, how can I do that? To keep the remote control of emotions in our own hands, we need to practice these 5 components of emotional intelligence, which I will repeat. First is self-awareness. Let's say you realize that your loved one has made you feel hurt for some reason, right? It could be at the workplace, it could be in a classroom, it could be at home. Next, literally the way I am talking to you, ask yourself, why are you feeling hurt? Is it that you are feeling rejected? Is it that you are feeling unimportant? Is it that you are feeling neglected? Whatever it is, write it down. Next, ask yourself, how would you like to respond in such a situation? You may think, oh, I don't say anything. I can just keep quiet and ignore it. But the fact that you're thinking about it again and again means you are not able to ignore it. So what helps is effective communication. If you can actually tell the other person how you are feeling in an absolutely calm and controlled manner. Third is self-motivation. Like when you have a remote control, you can always control the temperature. If it feels too warm, you can lower the temperature. If it's too hot, you can increase the temperature. So in the same way, what you can do with your loved ones is understand that if they respond in a way after you've communicated that you like, it's great. If they don't, then you always have a choice how you want to go ahead. So if you start practicing this, over time, you will develop empathy. You'll be able to walk in the other person's shoes. You will understand what made them behave the way they did. And lastly, your own interpersonal skills will improve in such a way that you will know how to have better relationships and do better at work. Thank you.
We have another question, ma'am.
Yes.
Overthinking is good or bad for emotional intelligence?
Now this is a very nice term that you have used, overthinking. I always believe that thinking is good for the mind. But what kind of thoughts am I thinking? Am I thinking helpful thoughts, which are like pets, warm, fuzzy, which increase my performance? Or am I thinking thoughts which are like pits, which absolutely pull me down, like down in the dumps? I'll simplify it for you. An exam is coming. At that point, if you think, oh my God, I have not studied. What if I do not clear it? I don't know, it's too late. What kind of a thought is it? Pit or pet? Obviously, it's a pit. Now, if you have exams coming and you realize that there are 10 topics to cover up, and let's say for whatever reasons, and I will not get into it, I'm not here to preach, you've just studied 2 topics and 8 are left. And you probably have a week to go for exams. If you could sit at that time and strategize, okay, I have a week and I have 8 topics to cover and I can't do it. So what would help at that time is which 4 seem doable for me and how many hours do I need to put in? Do I need to switch my phone off? Do I need to sit in a closed room and study? And how is it that I would want to study? Read the entire chapter or make notes about it. That kind of thinking is a pet because it helps your performance. So when we talk about overthinking, it's actually our thinking which is good for emotional intelligence. And regulating and catching our thoughts is what is extremely good for emotional intelligence. When a thought comes to your mind, sit with it the way I'm talking to you here and think, what kind of a thought is it? Does this increase my performance or does it bring me down? Okay. I have one more question here. How to control anger in professional fields when we see that the situation we are right and the other person shouting is not correct? Here, as I spoke about 5 components of emotional intelligence, let's say you realize that, you are right and the other person is not right. Firstly, what you are going to do is you become aware of what you are feeling. Are you feeling angry that because you are right and the person's not acknowledging it? Are you feeling helpless? Are you feeling irritated? First, become aware of what you are feeling. Next, try and regulate that irritation. Practice the pause, like I said, count till 10 and think about how do you want to respond to it. So we have put in the first two components of emotional intelligence in action. Now we come to the third point, self-motivation. Now, do you want to say your point across? If it's a friend, or let's say a helpful professor, or a good boss or a team member who is willing to take in your answers or your point of view in a very calm, humble way, put your point across. That calm, assertive stance will help you get your point across, rather than coming across as someone who's bristling and saying, "Sir, I'm right and you are wrong." Is that going to help your cause? No, obviously it's not. But if you could say things like, "Excuse me, sir, I have a point of view. May I share it with you?" Do you think you would get a positive response? So when you start talking like this, you start controlling your anger. And what helps more than anything else is mindfulness that I've spoken about. If you are doing daily meditation for 5-10 minutes, you are able to hold on to your thoughts without going into a reactive mode. See, all the time what happens is, when the other person is wrong, we think that is an invitation to be wrong ourselves. What I have seen, why we need to cater to our emotional well-being, is because that gives us a choice to be who we want to be. It gives us a chance to use our emotional intelligence. And that is precisely why I have chosen to address all of you today. See, if you wake up in the morning, your teeth do stink. But if you brushed the previous night, you would have fewer bacteria. And yes, when you brush again, you are as good as new. So when we actually apply emotional intelligence to specific situations, over time, we are able to manage our lives in such a way that we are resilient. When things don't go our way, we are able to cope up and we are able to put our point across. Okay, now I have another question from Nidhi Joshi. Positive overthinking is good, but is it good if one is procrastinating a lot for self-growth and hustling hard? I did not say positive overthinking is good. All I said is thinking is good. Now, procrastinating is something. What is the quality of procrastination? If you feel you are Aristotle in the making, where you are going to watch the apple drop and you're going to come out with one of the laws, I have nothing to say. But for most of us, when we procrastinate, we don't do what needs to be done, and we are just a little mindless about things. So procrastinating does not help. What does help is regular, disciplined strategizing to feel good about life and have work-life balance. If I'm someone who likes to watch TV, hang around with friends, I need to set some time for it on a regular basis. I need to sleep enough. I also need to understand that I need to do my basic productivity. A lot of times when we are budding adults, we may be 18, we may be 20, we may be 21. But as Spider-Man said, with great power comes great responsibility. So at your age, if you want to enjoy the fruits of your management or your engineering degree that you have enrolled for, what's really going to help is take responsibility for your life, take responsibility for your growth, and then factor in time for any kind of entertainment that you need. After all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, right? But it can be all play and a little bit of work. Now, how to get focused and concentrated when you are very fickle-minded. This is something that what you could do. Daily meditation is extremely helpful when we talk about it. In fact, at the end of this session, I will be sharing a questionnaire with you, which I hope will give you some food for thought on how you could be mindful. So daily mindfulness is very, very important. Set aside 10 minutes a day. If you can, have a fixed hour, either morning or evening that works for you, and sit quietly by yourself. And after that, breathe. You can Google something that makes you feel good, some kind of guided visualization, or you can just meditate, sit with your thoughts for 10 minutes. That is extremely helpful for focus and concentration. Even to remove distraction in your mind, what you need to do is just meditate. And that is a good place to start off with. Now, Ridhima, you have a question, how to forget bad memories. One way that helps is journaling. I do recommend seeking help from a good therapist if there are issues that you're not able to let go of. You know, having a safe space to vent usually helps us feel cathartic, where we feel like, you know, you've seen a pus-filled wound. What happens? We need to drain the pus out. In the same way, if you have bad memories, that charge which comes whenever we think of it, that needs to be drained out. Usually it needs good therapeutic or clinical intervention to let go of the bad memories. So a safe space to vent is very, very important to heal from bad memories. When we feel low, what could we do? Exercise really helps, you know, regular exercise really helps. One more simple trick is sometimes we are very dehydrated and we don't realize. We live in a tropical country, and if our water balance is out of sync, we do not feel very good mentally. Also ask yourself, is it that you are hungry, you are late, or you are extremely tired? Are you well rested? When we talk about mental health, what's really important is it has that fertile climate to feel nurtured. Adequate rest, adequate food, adequate water is essential for controlling low moods if there is no organic basis to it. A lot of mood swings happen for these three reasons. You would be surprised. Many a times in therapy, the amount of people, when I ask them, they do not have the basic 3 to 4 liters of water a day. And the moment they did it, up to a large extent, it did help their mood. So what really helps to control your moods is, firstly, use your emotional intelligence and feel your feelings. If you take care of your emotional well-being on a daily basis, then you have a stable emotional set point. You would not feel so low on a regular basis. And it's like something that you have taken care of. What thought can help us remain inspired always to continuously progress challenges? One thing that really works for me is reading good motivational books, you know, good biographies. They really motivate me. Another way is there are a lot of matter available on Audible. You can, of course, in fact, for all of you listeners here, at the end of the session, I will be sharing a code with you, which gives you access to my Udemy course for free for the next 3 days. How to cultivate wisdom. That is something that can help each one of you. Usually they have a $20 fee on it, but I will share the coupon with you. I will share it with your teachers at Techno India, and the code will come to you. Please access it. Please listen to it. And listening to some kind of motivational tips on a regular basis really, really helps you take care of your mental health and well-being. In fact, this concept that I'm talking about, emotional ability resources, emotional well-being, this course is available too on Udemy. And for all of you listeners here, I'm going to offer it for free for the next 3 days. And the link will be shared with you. So go ahead and take care of it. Is negative-minded person good for us? What do you think, Sujoy? See, this is where self-awareness helps. Ask yourself, you know, who's our best friend, whom we neglect the most? It's our own self. The way I am talking to you, ask yourself. Often there is a voice within which will give us an answer, right? So, are there any further questions, or are we?
We have one more question, ma'am.
Okay.
What one should do if anyone uses his silence for his or her profit?
I cannot see that. If someone, can you repeat the question?
What one should do if anyone uses his silence for his or her profit?
See, you can't do anything if someone else is using silence for profit. But what I have seen is I need a little bit more elaboration on that. Exactly.
This
What do
question is
you
by
mean?
Vibu Banerjee.
Okay. Can you please elaborate a little bit more, Mr. Banerjee? In the meantime, can a person be misjudged on his or her attitude? I do think so. You know, the whole point is, why are we talking about emotional intelligence? We are talking to reduce our own prejudices and to fine tune our own intelligence and our own discerning quality and the way we view the attitude of others. The component 4 of emotional intelligence that I spoke about, empathy. Empathy makes us pause and actually take stock of the situation. What is going on in the other person's mind? It actually stops us from misjudging situations. It stops us from getting into sticky situations where I have not stopped to think about how is this particular way of thinking impacting me or another person. So yes, again, it's a little bit like fitness. You know, you may feel ki I can't do any form of physical exercise, but when you start doing it over time, you become better at it, and the result is physical fitness. So in the same way, if you start working on your emotional well-being and nurture it on a day-to-day basis, your emotional intelligence kicks in, and over time you misjudge a lot lesser. You become more empathetic, you become more easy and flexible, and that results in better relationships overall with fewer chances of miscommunication or communication gaps. I have one more question here. How to control our voice and voice modulation when we become angry? I had shared earlier on. One is practice the pause. The best way is to practice the pause. Yes, like this. Keep quiet, count till 5 or 10 in your mind, and then take a conscious decision that yes, my peace of mind and my way of communication is important to me, and I will not give the remote control of my emotions to another. So I choose to modulate my voice. So when I'm very conscious of it, by the time I've counted till 10, it helps me calm down. What also helps is a sip of water. Try these two things, and I'm sure you'll be able to control your voice modulation and the tone of your voice when you are angry. Is the line, the first impression is the last impression, totally correct? In the first sense, how to cope with loneliness when no one loves or cares about you? I have a question for you. Do you love and care about yourself? If I am there, mine is there. So Aditya, my first question to you is, do you love yourself? And if you don't, would you like to love yourself? That's my next question to you. So I really recommend listening to some kind of affirmations for healing. If you go on YouTube, there is a lady called Louise Hay who does a lot of affirmations on self-love. Start there. If you love yourself, then you become like a magnet for love. Others also find something loving in you. But if you do not love yourself, it's very difficult to feel loved by others. So I recommend listen to half an hour of self-love affirmations on a regular basis for 40 days, and then see the magic of love unfold in your life. See, again, these sayings, first impression is the last impression. Usually we think that this actually comes from that standpoint that our gut instinct is very strong. We feel it in our gut, you know, who's good for us, who's bad for us. And that is where, you know, there's a lot of literature, scientific literature, which is available where our second brain is in our gut. So, you know, with that line of thinking, this line usually has been found to be correct. Yet at the same time, there is enough literature to tell you that first impressions may mislead us because they come from our prejudices or a very restricted way of thinking. Sometimes I may have heard something bad about another person. So I judge that person as not friendly, aloof, very snobbish, right? Because just on hearsay. So, and then when we interact with the person, we realize that no, this person is very warm and very positive, and I'm enjoying talking to that person. So then we are able to move beyond our initial standpoint. Any further questions?
No, ma'am, we are done with the questions. Thank you everyone for joining. We will take a small survey now. Ma'am, requesting you to please proceed.
Okay. Has the survey link been sent to them, Mr. Dubey?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Will you ask her to share? How do I share it right now?
You can send in chat box.
Okay, just give me a minute. Everyone, this is something which will help your emotional intelligence, and I strongly recommend that you